The Lassie Talks podcast.
Hi, I'm Yvonne.
And I'm Robert.
And welcome to Lassie Talks podcast, where we talk about how to build a better bond with your dog. And this is the last episode in our series 1. And we're going to talk about what sort of owner are you?
And I will give a little health advice on doing a daily quick over 7-point health check on your dog.
Okay. So we're going to think about what sort of dog owner and we are. And I think what I want to bring up is the history of dog ownership and how we've developed. Now, we're quite long in the tooth, aren't we? And
Too long.
And we've seen fashions come and go.
We have.
And when we were young and first got our first dog, the theory of that time was all about dominating your dog, and that dogs that were misbehaving were dominant dogs. Yeah.
Yes, and the way to cure that was to be what we now call aversive.
Yeah.
They might have called it firm.
Yeah, and they talked about doing alpha rolls and
there was lots of use of things like the choke chain.
And
was
shock
the tool, and that was developed into shock collars, prong collars, and so on.
Yeah,
which we have discussed to a degree in previous podcasts. But just to remind people that these are what we call aversive. They are things that administer pain or distress to the dog in order to control it. How do you think that works, Yvonne?
Well, the thing is that, people think, and it stops the behavior happening because it uses the startle reflex in a dog. And, then a dog will stop and evaluate. And of course, the behavior stops. And then they think they've cured it. But they're actually only suppressing that behavior using such aversive methods. And as I say in my book, I was one of those misguided trainers who knew no different because that's what we were brought up with.
Yeah, you might be called a harsh traditionalist in that respect.
I might have been, yes. I never went totally that way. Because,
no, I mean, there are some people that take it to the nth degree.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's the water pistol startle, or there's that clonk across the nose, or as
with the rolled up newspaper,
or using a shock collar. I never felt comfortable with using harsh methods, and you can see how the bond gets broken between owner and the dog when you use these harsh methods.
Yes, and you would know from your own experience of life how fear is not a great motivator to do something for someone.
Exactly,
and the very minimum needed to avoid the aversive punishment.
Yeah, and as an ex-teacher as well, that I used to teach at school, all ages, right up to them doing their A-levels and what have you. Basically secondary school, although I have taught at little ones as well when I was a peripatetic teacher. But the thing is that one of my year 9s said to me once, when I said, well, if you don't do that, you can go outside. And he said he felt like he was being controlled. And he did. We had a very sort of, adult conversation, and he was right. When we fear something, and as human beings, that might happen as a consequence, we're more likely to feel controlled, by that other person. But how much more are we likely to do something when we feel encouraged? We're much more likely, and it's the same with our dogs. Isn't it? Their brains we've got similar,
Yeah, the brain chemistry is very similar when all is said and done.
Absolutely.
Surely they haven't got quite the prefrontal cortex that we have to analyse and
reflect
and
reason.
reason. No, but they will instinctively react on the level of what's going to happen immediately if I do this or not.
They feel intimidated.
They can feel intimidated, of
And
course, and fearful.
And then they're not likely to learn. It's suppressing the behaviour, but they're not actually learning anything at all, really, are
Yes,
they?
and I think dog trainers through the ages will have recognised this, even if they haven't always adhered to it, that, just by beating the dog, you don't necessarily get the best out of the dog.
Yeah.
I'm sure people with working dogs know this instinctively, even though they might still use aversive methods and punishment as we used to with children.
Yeah, that's the thing, because, our generation, you were brought up with a threat of a wooden spoon. And my mother's favourite term was now or later. So that was the threat of the smack.
Yeah.
So,
which was freely given, no doubt.
Yes, I mean, unfortunately, and today, with children's protection and safeguarding and all that sort of thing that's coming into schools, we would not dream of threatening a
and
child.
you can see that in the confidence that young people have today. We see them on television doing things and saying things in such a way
They're so eloquent.
Absolutely. That I'm sure at that age, when I was that age, I wouldn't have been able to do anything like that.
Yeah, I think it was because
their confidence is there.
Yeah, we were brought up with that threat and we were fearful. And I think what is good about dog training and dog ownership now is people are becoming more informed. And that's the third sort of trainer that, owner you can have, the well-informed trainer. So you've got the misguided trainer that I think I was, and the harsh traditionalist who thinks that, aversive treatment is the only way,
and everything else is newfangled.
Yes, it's things are going to pot these days. What they need is quick, kick up the rear end. That'll soon teach them type of, approach, or the informed owner and dog trainer. Those are the three. And what I would encourage people is obviously to invest in a good dog school and actually become one of those informed owners.
And through that, they can learn the term you use is dogmanship.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit of a passion for me because, as our sad story, well, obviously, that listeners might not know and viewers might not know that we had a very, very difficult time with our first dog as a married couple, didn't we?
We did indeed, yes.
And because...
Way back when.
Yeah, and because of the lack of knowledge then about dog ownership and how dogs learn, we went to... we kept him for 4 years, but we went to extreme levels to try and find...
but out there was not the information that we have today, not the techniques, not the methods. We think we could have got better outcomes looking back.
Yeah, and I don't want
with the information that we have available now, and the way things have transpired over the last 40 years.
Yeah, I don't want people to go through the same pain that we had to go through in the same decision making.
No, that's your passion. That's why you wrote your book.
Absolutely, because and not saying that every dog can be saved, because it's like human beings that the things health. We talk about dogs' health, and the old adage is we never put a healthy dog down. But if they've got such a bad bite history, and sometimes and law dictates that the dog has to be euthanized, and we've had that over the years, sadly, because the dog has bitten somebody badly, and I can remember the chap.
Yes, the law is quite strict on these things, and
he came. One client came in and weeping bitterly because his child was actually in hospital, and we said, you're doing the kindest thing for this dog. And,
These are tough decisions to make, are
tough
they not?
decisions to make, but it's an informed decision. And he thanked us and for being so understanding. And I think because we had that experience ourselves, we could be really understanding and come alongside him and help him through
Yeah,
that.
and that's, as you say, your passion is to contact and help and
Prevent, really. Yeah.
with instruction and help and advice. But of course, it requires people to be informed enough to be seeking the advice early enough on when things are only slightly awry and they know that things are going to go wrong, and they need to be committed, of course, to be able to put in action all the information that's now available to make the outcome different to what it could otherwise be.
Yeah, and there was one case, if you remember, that the dog hadn't actually bitten, but was showing tendency to resource guard, and unfortunately, the health of the adults in the family, they were very unwell. Both of them in and out of hospital, had a young child, and we walked alongside them and helped them find another home for their dog.
Yes, and that can be a successful outcome, even though maybe they don't have the dog, but the dog is somewhere where it is understood that people are able, physically, mentally,
Yes, yeah,
able
yeah,
to cope with the situation.
yeah, and
So there's a lot to be said for looking for rehoming into the right homes.
yeah, and I know dog trainers out there don't like to talk about that side of things, and there is the tendency to think, oh, if only you do this or you do that, and if you comply with my instructions. But as I say in my book, sometimes life comes, and we find ourselves in a difficult situation, and it's not our fault.
Yeah, circumstances can dictate situations, and the situation develops, and you have to look at a way round that, and that's got to be the way to look for the dog's welfare.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you are an informed trainer and you do avoid the harsh methods, which were all based on the research into wolves and captive wolves, and they watched these wolves and they talked about the alpha wolf, and and then they try to mimic the behavior of that alpha wolf, and they talked about being the alpha of the pack in your family, when actually when it came to that, those dogs were being watched, and the ecology of that situation was being noted. But in real life, a wolf lives far more in a family scenario, where they take, they have a family where they're parental towards the other members of their pack, and they don't attack or put them in the place. It was sheer frustration, I think, in the packs in those wolf parks, where there was not enough space.
Yeah, so you're saying as our understanding improves and develops, we have better ways of training our dogs. And the thing about it is, and we hope we're getting this over in this this series of podcasts, is to encourage you, the owner, to become informed, to link up with podcasts like these and good training schools, and investigate what's happening, to understand your dog, understand yourself, and create a good bond.
Absolutely, and the thing is that don't beat yourself up. We were misguided owners, just the same.
Yeah, we understand where you are. We are here to help, indeed.
Yeah, and that's what we will discuss further on in series 2. I mean, the thing is to enjoy your dog, isn't it? Really, and
Absolutely. They are part of your family.
have fun with the dog. And, so much more is got by, and I used to say this to my clients all the time, more carrot, less stick.
More carrot, less stick.
Didn't I? I mean, it was one of my favourite sayings. I think that because in the past there was always this idea that you had to punish a dog for bad behaviour. And then there was this idea that you ignored your dog for bad behaviour. But as we've seen with action prompting at the beginning of this series of podcasting, if you ignore action prompting, they're just going to be more persistently prompting you to give them attention. And, I say, okay, your dog's doing that. Let's redirect that energy.
Yeah, it's all about redirecting the behaviours and the energy in the right direction, the direction you want it to go, not just randomly. And it's so important that we support people as they're trying to do that, I think.
Yeah. And this is why we've started these podcasts, because we know still, I mean, it's scary, out there. There's so much still on the programs, using the idea that we're still having to put the dog in its place, having to be boss and to show them who's boss and to be leader of the pack. And, what we're trying to do here and trying to do is to inform our friends out there that there are better ways of doing things.
Yes, and you've written a book, and you've developed an acronym that lays that out.
Yes, my Lassie acronym, which is leave behind the idea of the perfect dog. After all, Lassie was not perfect.
No.
Yeah. The thing is, we buy a dog, we think it's going to be perfect, and then we're disillusioned when it isn't. Myth buster number 1, puppies aren't born perfect. We have to nurture and be informed about how we're going to train that little puppy, or indeed your rescue dog to
Yes, your new acquisition into your family,
Yeah.
new member of your family.
And the A is for adopting the reinforcement methods of training, good, positive ways of training that there's now research done with the clicker training, understanding that how the pre-MAC principle works, where you get your dog to do a behaviour. It's like a child eating its greens to get its ice cream. All the positive. And, as I said with my year 9s, they didn't like being controlled. But if I was able to catch them when they were doing something really good, and well done, if I saw them doing a behaviour that was really good, they're more likely to repeat that behaviour, because they, rather than feeling controlled and intimidated, they actually felt, a part of it. It was becoming part of a good team, and that's what you create with your dog: a good team, a good bond.
Yeah, that's very important, creating a good team.
Yeah, and
you and your dog working together.
Yeah, and that's what I tried to do when I was teaching. And then the S for solve the impulse problems. Your dog will act on impulse. It does see a squirrel and wants to chase, and we have to think about how we're going to solve that problem. And that is by giving them all their hedonic budget that they need as a breed and their breed type and what they enjoy to do. So you solve the impulse problems, and then, schedule play with your dog. And
play is so important, as we've discussed in a previous podcast.
Yeah, and it relieves stress. It relieves our stress, which we particularly need in these lockdown times, and it relieves the puppy stress. And I always like saying, when you put the kettle on for a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, as your kettle is boiling, play with your dog while you're waiting for it to boil.
Yep, good for you, good for the dog.
Yeah, and it gets your dog to focus on you, and just to build that bond. And also, invest in a good dog training school, or indeed invest in watching our podcasts.
Yeah,
it's time investment, and you're going to get something out of it, and you're going to be able to learn more about good dogmanship. And I often think, if once the lockdown is completely lifted and we can get our clients and see them face to face again, it's a bit like playing chess. Having somebody look from the outside at what you're doing and just tweak it. And it's like a dance with your dog, isn't it? When you're building that bond, you're building a team together, and, having somebody say, oh, just try this. I mean, I had a situation where I was training with my dog, and Fred would biff me on the hand, then rush out for his send away, which is when you send a dog to a place away from you on to a spot you've chosen, and the trainer with me laughed, and we both knew that I was giving that dog, wasn't a dog being naughty, biffing me in the hand and then going. I'd given him a cue that meant he thought he had to do that. And, and you need somebody sometimes just to look from the outside and see what you're doing and help you understand, what you were doing. It's sometimes an imperceptible cue, isn't it?
Yeah, can be. And it does need someone who knows what they're talking about and has good observational skills to see what's happening.
Yeah,
so that's where you need to invest in a good dog training school.
Yeah, that's really helpful,
or
isn't
someone
it?
to help you, indeed.
Or somebody to come alongside you and help you. And then there's just enjoy your dog, and enjoy your dog for all that it can be, but you've got to remember that good boundaries are the key, and that it's like children. You teach them to scribble and paint within the black lines, and it's like that with your dog. You're trying to help them understand what your boundaries are in your house, and what
your rules
and your rules,
and encourage them and be supportive of them staying within that.
Yeah, but there are sometimes when your dogs are showing some signs of not being happy, and I'd like to pass over to you. There are times when your dog seems to be, not well for some reason, and
that brings me on to 7 daily health checks for your dog. Your dog, after it's been with you for a while, when it's not well. So when it's not well, go and seek advice at your local vets. Phone up, get an appointment, get them to check it over. But there are things you can do. So starting at the front, there's the ears, nose and throat.
And eyes.
Yes. So open the dog's mouth, check.
Yeah.
Check that nice and pink and there's no horrible smells and the teeth are gleamy white and everything looks in order. Look into the eyes, make sure there's no discharges or discolorations of the eyes. Check the nose, make sure it's nice and moist where appropriate and there's no nasty discharges or anything like that. Ears, smell. Look, make sure that the dog's not showing excessive irritation from them or pain or discomfort. Check over the body. Check down to the paws. Check the paws. We've talked about that. We've checked the paws for seeds and foreign bodies and things getting there. Make sure the nails are not overgrown. Check along the body. Run your hands on the body. Be hands-on. Check for lumps and bumps. Get right down to the tail. Remember, lift the tail. Make sure our digestion is working. Those are good points.
Yes, sometimes, under the body can be mucky, can't it?
It can, and you might not know if you've not been, out in the dark and the dog's been out or let out in the garden. It might be having perhaps some problem, either difficulty passing or passing too much.
Oh, we're talking about poo again.
We are back to poo. So perhaps a good point to stop.
Yes.
At
yeah.
the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we always end up talking about poo somehow.
Yeah, funny. That's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Well, okay. So this is the end of series 1, and
Yeah.
do keep in touch, and with our website, lassietalks.com. Keep in touch on Facebook, and put in any questions you'd like to for us to answer. And we look forward to series 2 when
we'll plan out some more topics to talk about
Yeah.
and get into it in great depth.
But most of all, enjoy your dog for all you are, and for they are, and all they could be, because after all, within every dog beats a Lassie's heart.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Lassie Talks. If you would like to get in touch or have any questions, then please visit lassietalks.com or visit our Facebook and YouTube page. Every dog has a Lassie's heart. So remember, we need to make our homes the best place for our dogs to be. See you soon at the next episode of Lassie Talks. Lassie Talks was recorded and produced at Monkey Nut Audiobooks.